The world has been given a stark wake-up call by Pope Leo XIV in what can only be described as a defining inaugural State of the World address. Speaking directly to the international diplomatic corps in the Vatican's Apostolic Palace, the Pope did not shy away from calling the contemporary global order into question. His words, that war is back in vogue and that the principle of respecting national borders has been completely undermined, instantly mark this as a Tier 1 signal. Here is a Pope who is not merely observing world events but issuing a profound moral and theological judgment with immediate implications for international stability. The immediate significance of this address cannot be overstated. By invoking the collapse of the post-World War II order and warning against a diplomacy increasingly rooted in force rather than consensus, Pope Leo XIV positions the Church as a moral compass in an era of escalating geopolitical tension. His references to Venezuela and the Caribbean Sea, set against the backdrop of recent US and Russian military actions, signal that this is a call not only for religious reflection but for urgent practical consideration among global leaders. The timing is precise, urgent, and deeply intentional. The timing of this address is as critical as its content. Delivered less than a week after the capture of Venezuela's leader and amid ongoing conflict in Ukraine, Pope Leo XIV's words reflect a deliberate choice to enter the public conversation at a moment of heightened instability. It is a clear signal that the Vatican is actively engaging in real time with global crises rather than offering abstract statements. The Pope's first major annual address is thus both declarative and cautionary, underlining the Church's insistence on the principles of international law and humanitarian respect in a rapidly shifting geopolitical landscape. Strategically, the address serves multiple purposes. It reinforces the Church's long-standing commitment to peace and multilateral cooperation, provides a theological framework for interpreting current crises, and communicates the Pope's intent to lead a pontificate marked by moral clarity and global engagement. Pope Leo XIV speaks not only as a religious authority but as a civic moral actor, emphasizing that ethical considerations, rooted in centuries of Church teaching, must prevail over political expediency and the pursuit of power. The dominant insight emerges clearly: the Church is reasserting its role as a conscience of the world at a decisive historical moment. Equally revealing in Pope Leo XIV's address are the elements he chose not to mention, which speak volumes about the Church's strategic positioning. Notably absent were explicit references to specific state actors beyond broad regional mentions, despite the proximity of high-profile events such as the US raid in Venezuela. By avoiding direct condemnation of any nation, the Pope preserves the Vatican's diplomatic neutrality while simultaneously signaling moral concern. This careful omission reinforces a long-standing institutional principle: the Church critiques principles and behaviors rather than engaging in partisan geopolitical debate, maintaining its credibility as an ethical authority above immediate political phrase. The language choices throughout the speech underscore a deliberate institutional signal. Pope Leo XIV repeatedly emphasizes abstract but weighty concepts. Multilateralism, international humanitarian law, principle of respecting borders, rather than assigning blame to specific governments. His use of words like undermined and zeal for war conveys urgency without provoking direct political confrontation. Absences of partisan rhetoric, combined with the measured cadence of his English delivery, signal both intellectual precision and pastoral discretion. Each phrase is carefully calibrated, revealing early markers of a pontificate that seeks to guide, not inflame, global discourse on conflict and human dignity. Institutionally, this address functions as a subtle directional marker for the Vatican. By foregrounding legal principles, moral imperatives, and multilateral norms, the Pope telegraphs the Vatican's emphasis on diplomacy grounded in ethical consistency rather than realpolitik. It also signals a renewed prioritization of the Vatican's voice in global affairs, positioning the Pope as a mediator and moral conscience capable of influencing both policy and public opinion. The absence of overt political alliances or references to specific powers further indicates a strategic effort to maintain the Church's universal credibility across nations. Finally, these omissions, coupled with subtle emphases, offer early insight into the trajectory of Pope Leo XIV's leadership. By highlighting humanitarian concerns, particularly regarding migrants and human trafficking. Without naming particular nations as offenders, he communicates both pastoral care and geopolitical awareness. The speech signals an intent to elevate ethical principles over immediate political interests, laying the groundwork for a pontificate that is globally attentive, historically informed, and institutionally consistent. Here, we see the Vatican balancing moral authority with careful diplomatic prudence, setting a tone that will resonate across embassies, capitals, and congregations worldwide. To fully grasp the weight of Pope Leo XIV's remarks, one must consider historical parallels spanning centuries of church engagement with war, diplomacy, and moral order. His reference to the collapse of the post-World War II international framework echoes lessons learned from the devastation of global conflict, when the Church first articulated its enduring commitment to peace through institutions like the United Nations. By invoking this period, the Pope situates current crises within a historical continuum, emphasizing that the principles of sovereignty, international law, and human dignity are not merely political conveniences but moral imperatives deeply rooted in the Church's understanding of social justice. The address also draws directly on the theological and political insights of St. Augustine, whose seminal work The City of God provides a framework for evaluating human ambition, societal order, and the tragic consequences of war. Pope Leo XIV cites Augustine to highlight the enduring tension between earthly power and divine order, reminding listeners that shifts in global power and migration echo patterns observed since late antiquity. This situates the Pope's message within a continuous intellectual and spiritual tradition, underscoring that moral guidance and doctrinal reflection remain central to the Church's response to worldly crises. Past papal precedents further illuminate the address's significance. Like Leo XII's interventions in 19th-century European conflicts or John Paul II's advocacy for peace during the Cold War, Pope Leo XIV asserts the Church's role as a moral arbiter. Yet there is a distinctive element in this pontificate. A combination of American-born perspective, fluency in global diplomatic norms, and the use of English as the primary language of address signals a nuanced bridging of cultural and ecclesial divides. The pattern continuity lies in emphasizing peace and multilateralism, while the deviation is his bold framing of war as a contemporary, pervasive threat demanding immediate reflection. Doctrinally, the address reflects the Church's unwavering commitment to natural law, the sanctity of human life, and ethical governance. By addressing issues from migration to humanitarian law, Pope Leo XIV situates current geopolitical tensions within a moral and theological framework that transcends politics. Internally, the speech also signals dynamics within the Church. A pontificate attentive to collegial input, responsive to global crises, and intent on unifying the faithful around principles rather than personalities. Here, historical awareness, doctrinal fidelity, and pastoral sensitivity converge to underscore the enduring relevance of Church teaching in shaping the moral discourse of our age. The implications of Pope Leo XIV's address are profound for both the global Church and the international community. His framing of war as a renewed global tendency immediately challenges policymakers, diplomats, and faith leaders to reconsider approaches to conflict resolution and multilateral engagement. By emphasizing respect for borders, humanitarian law, and the dignity of migrants, the Pope is effectively issuing a moral compass for nations navigating political crises. For the faithful, his words serve as a call to prayer, discernment, and engagement, reminding Catholics that their spiritual convictions intersect with real-world responsibilities in shaping a just and peaceful society. In the short term, expect heightened Vatican attention on diplomatic channels, particularly in regions experiencing escalating tensions. The speech establishes a benchmark against which future Vatican interventions will be measured, signaling that Pope Leo XIV intends to be proactive rather than reactive in global affairs. Middle-term consequences may include increased collaboration with international organizations, advocacy for the protection of human rights, and a more visible Vatican role in mediating disputes. His emphasis on multilateralism and lawful conduct offers an ethical framework that may influence both secular policymakers and the global Church's pastoral priorities. Looking ahead, there are clear signals for the Vatican's trajectory under this pontificate. Pope Leo XIV is positioning the Church as both a moral authority and a strategic actor, capable of guiding the ethical discourse in a world increasingly dominated by unilateral action and military adventurism. Observers should watch for concrete diplomatic initiatives, statements aligning with international humanitarian law, and further guidance on matters where global instability intersects with human dignity. The Pope's early pontificate focus on listening to the College of Cardinals also indicates a desire for broader internal consultation before public interventions, ensuring that doctrinal clarity accompanies strategic prudence. In conclusion, this address is more than a statement. It is a declaration of intent. Pope Leo XIV has clearly defined the moral, theological, and strategic priorities of his pontificate, emphasizing peace, human dignity, and the rule of law as non-negotiable benchmarks. As global conflicts continue to evolve, the Church under his leadership signals a commitment to principled engagement, moral clarity, and pastoral care. For both the faithful and the world, the dominant insight remains. The Vatican is reasserting its role as a guiding conscience at a moment when ethical leadership is urgently required.